Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about the non-linear pharmacokinetics. So first we have to see what is linear pharmacokinetics. So in that, the change in the amount of drug in the body or change in the amount of drug in the plasma due to the absorption, distribution, metabolism and excretion process is directly proportional to its the dose, whether it is single or multiple dose. So in such situations, the rate process are said to follow the first order kinetics or linear kinetics. So time with the graph go for the straight line in constant up or the down like that. So that go for the linearity. So we have to plot the semi-log paper, the C concentration versus time for different dose. When correct for the dose, administrators are going for superimposible. In non-linear pharmacokinetics, so the pharmacokinetic parameters like ADME are dependent upon the carrier or the enzymes that are substrate specific. So they have a definite capacity and are susceptible to the saturation point at high drug concentration. So in such case, the process not follow the first order kinetics and it transfer into the mixture of first order and the zero order rate process. So that time it gives that non-linearity. So the pharmacokinetics of such drug are said to be dose dependent, or rather we can call mixed order kinetics, non-linear, capacity limited kinetics are there. So for the detection of non-linear pharmacokinetics, we have to find out simplest test. Several tests are there. So for detect linearity, non-linearity based kinetics, but the simplest one, that is we have to go for the determination of steady state plasma concentrations at different dose, and then we have to find out that because steady state concentrations are directly proportional to the dose, it follows the linearity in the kinetic. But if we are not getting proportionally with the dose, the steady state concentration is not observed, so that we have to say that it is follow the non-linearity. Second, we have to go for the determination of some important pharmacokinetic parameters like elimination half-life, fraction viability, the clearance, total body clearance at the different dose of the drug, and then any changes in these parameters, that pharmacokinetic parameters we have to find out. So that indicate that is the kinetic follow the non-linearity. What are the cause for the non-linearity? So that occurs on drug absorption, drug distribution, drug metabolism and drug excretion. We have to see one by one. In drug absorptions, how we can find out the non-linearity? So there is three sources are there. So when absorption is solubility or dissolution rate limited, examples like isofluvin. So where the absorption of the drug is based on solubility or dissolution rate limited, so at higher dose, saturations of the solubility of the drugs is formed in the GI tract or at the absorption site or at any other extravascular site. So that time rate of absorption attained as a constant value. So it means when the absorption is solubility dissolution rate limited, at the higher dose, that type of effect shown after the saturation point of that drug into that particular GI medium. So that time non-linearity we can find out when absorption involves carrier mediated transport system other than passive diffusion. Carrier mediators are there, so it is a structure specific special carrier required, their concentration are limited. So the higher dose limited drugs that bind with specific carriers, after that saturations are occurs. So the examples like riboflavin, ascorbic acid. So saturation of the transport system at higher dose of that vitamin, that results into that non-linearity. Then when pre-systemic gut wall or hepatic metabolism attains the saturation, so that is also that affect their linearity portions. So example like propranolol, verapamil. So saturation of that pre-systemic metabolisms of these drugs at high dose that lead to increase the viability. So the parameters that is affected, the fraction of absorption, viability, absorption rate constant, Cmax, AUC, and decrease in this parameter is observed in former the two case and the increase in the later case. So in that first two criteria, these parameters go for the decreasing, like Cmax, AUC, absorption rate constant, viability. But in later case, third one, that go for the increasing. So that cause the non-linearity in the drug absorption after changes, gastric empty, GI blood flow, and other physiological factor also that go for the non-linearity parts are there in the drug absorption base. Then next, the drug distribution. So that non-linearity is also found in distribution of drug administered at the high dose. So in that, the first may be due to the saturation of binding site on plasma protein. So example, phenylbutazone. So there is a finite number of binding site for a particular drug on the plasma protein, so that theoretically the concentration is rise. So to this fraction of drugs going for unbound, because specific proteins are limited, their binding sites are limited, their saturations are there at the higher dose, so remaining drugs go for the unbound form. Saturation of tissue binding sites. So in that, thiopental examples are there with large single bolus dose or multiple dosing. Saturation of tissue storage site can also occur. So in the both the cases, the saturation of binding site of plasma protein as well as saturation of tissue binding site. So free plasma drug concentration going for the increasing, because the saturation of both the case and the dose are given higher. So remaining drug, because plasma protein and binding site limited, tissue binding site also limited, both going for saturation. So the remaining drugs is in the free form, unbound form. So that increase the volume of distributions. So in that, but volume of distribution increase only in the former case, where it decrease in the later case. So in that, plasma protein binding site saturated, so it increase the free drug concentrations into the plasma. Clearance is also altered, because depend upon the extraction ratio of the drug. So clearance of the drug with higher ER is greatly increased due to the saturation of binding site. So the unbound clearance of drug with low ER is unaffected. So that also expect in increase the pharmacological response. So like that, the non-linearity we have to find out in the drug distribution part. The next, the drug metabolism or biotransformation of the drugs. So in that, non-linear kinetics, most clinically important is capacity limited metabolisms due to the enzyme or cofactors. Enzymes saturations are there. So that is examples, phenytoin, alcohol. Then the enzyme induction, carbamazepines, where the decrease in peak plasma concentration, that it has been observed on repetitive administration over a period of time. Autoinductions characterized in this case is also dose dependent. Enzyme induction is a common cause for both dose and time dependent kinetics are the saturation of enzymes that result in decrease the hepatic clearance, and therefore they increase the steady state concentration. So that is reverse true for the enzyme induction. So other causes for the non-linearity in metabolism include the saturation of, already we have to say, binding site, inhibitory effect of metabolite or enzymes, pathological conditions like hepatic dysfunction, hepatic disease disorders are there. So that toxicity, hepatotoxicity, that is changes the enzyme metabolite process, change in the hepatic blood flow. So all are one another way that affecting the non-linearity parts, or that gives the non-linearity based on the drug metabolism. Next, that is drug excretion. So the drug excretion, in that two active process, it is renal excretion of the drugs that are saturable, that is active tubular secretion and active tubular reabsorption. So in that active tubular secretion, penicillin G is an example. So after the saturation of carrier system, the decrease in the renal clearance occurs, and for active tubular reabsorptions, for the reabsorption of vital vitamins, glucose, water soluble contents. So after the saturation of carrier system, that increasing the renal clearance. So in both the case, in first case for the secretion, that go for the decrease the renal clearance, and in for the active tubular reabsorptions, that saturation part of that carrier system, that is increase the renal clearance. Other sources for the non-linearity in renal excretion include forced diuresis, the medicines that we have to take, diuretic drugs that increase the urination part, change in the urine pH with the drug and with the disease, if suffer from the kidney disease, nephrotoxicity and saturation of the binding site, and other secretions. So maybe that is reasons for the, we have to find out the non-linearity in the drug excretion part. So these are the causes or reasons we have to see in that drug absorption, drug distribution, drug metabolism and excretion, that gives a non-linearity based pharmacokinetic. Now the next one, that is the determination of rate absorptions for non-linear pharmacokinetic, which drug that follow the non-linear kinetics. So these are the methods that we have to use to find out the non-linear kinetic based determination of rate of absorption. In that, most important, that is Michaelis-Menten equation, Lineweaver-Burk, Hanes-Woolf, Woolf-Augustinsson-Hostftee plot. So these are based all that we have to use for determining the rate of absorptions which follow the non-linear kinetic. We have to see one by one. The first one, that is Michaelis-Menten equations. So this is most widely used to determine the absorption rate constant, the kinetics of capacity limited or saturable process. These are the main reasons. The saturation and capacity limited, that process go for the non-linear kinetics. So it is best described by the Michaelis-Menten equation, and the equation is the time with the change in the concentration. So rate of decline of drug concentration with time. So dC by dt is equal to Vmax into C upon divided by Km plus C. So the dC by dt, the change of the drug concentration with time. Vmax is represent the theoretical maximum rate of the process, and the Km is the Michaelis-Menten constant. So here the graph is there. So dC by C, we can go dC by dt versus C, we have to go for the graph. So we have to find out that the initially they follow the first order rate at the low dose, mixed order rate we have to go for intermediate dose, zero order rate at the high dose, and so we from that we have to find out that Vmax and the Km value. So here the three situations can be possible, so depending upon the values of Km and C. So three possibility or criteria we can see that when Km is equal to C, the first possibility is there. So under this situation, when Km is equal to C, so the previous equations for the Michaelis-Menten equation, it becomes minus dC by dt when Km is equal to C. So the equations reduce, it becomes like Vmax upon 2. So the rate of process is equal to the half of the maximum rate. The change in the concentration with time is depend on the half of the concentration of the maximum rate. So Vmax by 2, and it follow the mixed order kinetics, mixed order rate kinetics. Second possibility is when Km is greater than C. So Km plus C is equal to Km. So the equation is becomes like dC by dt is equal to Vmax into C upon Km. So that decline, that describe the first order elimination process where we have to find out Vmax by Km is equal to K. Third possibility is there when Km is less than the C value. So Km plus C, it becomes equal to the C. So the equation is become minus dC by dt is equal to Vmax. So the rate process occur at the maximum rate. It follow the zero order kinetics. So now we have to find out the estimation of Km and Vmax value. So these parameters of capacity limited process like metabolisms, renal tubular secretion, biliary secretion are there, absorptions are there. So Km and Vmax can be assessed from the plasma concentration time data collected after giving the IV bolus administration of drug with non-linear elimination. So the previous equations for the Michaelis Menten, that is dc by dt is equal to Vmax into C upon Km plus C. We have to go for the integration of that above equations followed by the conversions up to the into the log base, so that equations become log C is equal to log C0 C0 minus C upon 2.303 km minus Vmax into T 2.303 upon km. When we have to got the plot semi-log plot log C versus time, a curve with terminal linear portions having slope minus Vmax upon 2.303 km, and when we go for the back extrapolated to the time to the 0 gives intercept log C0 back extrapolated value. So log C0 log C is equal to log C0 minus Vmax upon 2.303 km. So at low plasma concentrations we have to go for the equating the two and simplify the further that equations. C0 minus C upon 2.303 km is equal to log C0 upon log C0 back extrapolated upon C0. Next we have to go for the second approach, that is Lineweaver-Burk plot. So we have to see that equation minus dc by dt is equal to Vmax into C upon Km plus C. The original equations are there. We have to go for the reciprocal plot, double reciprocal plot or Lineweaver-Burk plot. So it is, we have to go for 1 upon. So we have to minus dc by dt, we can represent V. So V is equal to Vmax into C upon Km plus C. So 1 upon V is equal to Km. The equation becomes like that one after the reciprocal. So 1 upon V is equal to Km upon Vmax into C plus 1 upon Vmax. We have to plot the graph, the 1 upon V versus 1 upon C. We have to get the straight line, and from that we have to find out the slope, that is Km upon Vmax, and intercept, that is 1 upon Vmax. From that we have to find out both Km and Vmax. The next approach, that is Hanes-Woolf plot. In that the equation initially is V is equal to Vmax into C upon Km plus C. We have to go for 1 upon V. So initially what we have to find out, similar like that, Km upon Vmax into C plus 1 upon Vmax. Then we have to go for with the addition of that concentrations value, C values in both the side. So C upon V is equal to Km upon Vmax plus C upon Vmax. Here we have to plot the graph C upon V versus C. We have to get the slope, that is 1 upon Vmax, and we have to get the intercept Km upon Vmax, the opposite of that previous one. The last one, that is Woolf-Augustinsson-Hostftee. So here the initial equations, V is equal to Vmax into C upon Km plus C. Then we have to go for rearrangement, Km plus C, that is divided, that is go for the another side. So V into, in the bracket, Km plus C is equal to Vmax into C. We have to separate out that bracket, Vc plus Kmv is equal to Vmax into C. We have to go for Km into V into the other side. So Vc is equal, becomes Vc is equal to Vmax into C minus Km into V. We have to divide it by the C both the sides. So V is equal to Vmax into C minus Km into V upon C. So we have to go for the opposite side divided by the concentration value. Then we have to remove it, the common things. So V is equal to, lastly we have to find out the equation, that is V is equal to Vmax minus Km into V upon C. Now we have to go for the plot V versus V upon C, and then we have to find out the slope minus Km, and the intercept, that value is Vmax. So from that methods we have to find out the Km and Vmax. So Km and Vmax for the steady state concentrations also. So we have to go for the the dosing rate dr is equal to steady state concentration and the total body clearance. So dr is equal to CSS into clearance, and in that a steady state the dosing rate is equal to the rate of decline in plasma drug concentration. So if the decline is due to the single capacity limited process, so the dr is equal to Vmax into CSS upon Km plus CSS. Go for the plotting of CSS versus dr, yield a typical hockey stick like shape curve, and from that we have to find out the Km and the Vmax. So for the steady state, previous one we have to find out similar way. We have to go for the Lineweaver-Burk plot, 1 upon means reciprocating the equations, 1 upon dr is equal to Km upon Vmax into CSS plus 1 upon Vmax. Plot the graph 1 upon dr versus 1 upon CSS. From the slope we can find out Km and Vmax. From intercept at the y-axis we have to find out the 1 upon Vmax. Direct line plot, we have to go for it. So here the graph, in that graph we have to see the pair of steady state concentration 1 and 2, that is obtained with two different dosing rate dr1 and dr2, that is plotted. So the points CSS1 and dr1 are joined to form a line, and second line is obtained similar by joining the CSS2 and dr2. The point where those two lines intersect each other is extrapolated on the dr axis to obtain Vmax, and on x axis extrapolated that we have to get the Km. So from both the line dr1 dr2 where they touches, then extrapolated in x axis and y axis we can get both the value of Vmax and the Km. And the last one, third graphical method. So in that the equations for the dosing rate for the estimation of Km and Vmax, so dr is equal to Vmax minus Km into dr upon CSS, steady state concentration. So here we have to go for the plot of dr versus dr upon CSS, that yield the straight line. From the slope we have to find out the minus Km, and the y-intercept we can find out the Vmax. So this is the non-linear pharmacokinetics we have to see. We have to see the cause for the non-linearity, and we have to find out the rate of constant for the non-linearity base. We have to find out the Km and Vmax by the Michaelis-Menten equations and the other plots. From that we have to find out the Km and the Vmax value. Thank you.